Hello, today I'm going to be painting this in Procreate on an iPad, showing you all the tools and settings I use and the process I go about from going from nothing to this. So I'll be showing you my layers and process and everything you could need to get started with Procreate. So let's go. Okay, first of all, I'll create a new canvas. I will just use the screen size, so check whatever that is. It's 2752 by 2064 for me. This is the iPad Pro 13, so it might be a bit smaller. But as long as it's around 2000-ish, that should be fine. I have no special settings on in Procreate. Everything's at default. You'll notice I've set up some little notches here, which indicates how big the brush is going to be. It's 21, 5, and 2. But don't worry too much about those because that's all relative to how big your screen is. So all I've really got is a big brush, medium brush. So you can see the size there, medium-ish, and then small for details. So as long as you got 3 like that, it should be fine. So the brush I'm using comes with Procreate for free. So you go into the painted sections and then flat brush. So grab that one. It's the only brush I'm going to use. So don't worry, once you got that set, it's fine. And if you press lightly on this brush, it does that. Medium, you get more. And then full on, you'll get the opaque, which is quite nice. So early on, we're going to be pressing hard, so it's all flat. So I'm going to start off with the big green shape of the ground, and I want to choose the dark shadow part of it. So pick a green. So make sure you're on the classic painting color thing. So you got a bunch of them. Make sure you're on classic, then you can follow what I'm doing. So the green is around there. I might push it towards the blue a little bit. But you can see, don't worry about being too accurate, but follow something like that. If you want the value of this one, it's 1D4B09. You can stick it into there, you can type it straight in. But I'm never that careful with these colors, and they will probably change, so don't get too hung up on them. So using that big brush, I'll put that big green one in, and this is the shadow part of the grass. So blast that in there. You don't need to be too accurate there. Just make sure, try not to have edges like this where it goes straight into the corner because it kind of looks weird, so get rid of that. And then I'll do, make sure it's all solid. You don't want that because it will be a bit more difficult to paint on later. So that's basically that for that one. Let's create another layer and let's do the path. And again, I'll choose a color. So it's going to be a sand type color. It should be around there. Again, don't try to match mine exactly. Just a browny color. And oops, lost my color. Accidentally color picked. Okay, something like that. And you can't see my colors exactly because while I film them, they'll look a bit different as well. So let's do something like this. And that goes off into the distance. You might want to swap to the smaller one. And we can do that. All we're looking for is flat shapes at the moment. They're not going to stay like this at the end, but we just want rough, nice shapes. And we can only tell if they're working later on, so don't worry about it too much yet. Okay, let's do the big trees. There's one big tree here and a couple dotted around. So we'll do the foreground tree. No, let's do the background trees first. So create a new layer, grab it. Sometimes it's a bit funny grabbing it. Stick it down the bottom. So you want this right at the bottom. And let's choose the tree trunk color. This doesn't really matter because we're going to change it quite a lot eventually. So let's get some of these trees in. Let's start with a big brush. Some of these trees are a little bit smaller actually. So this is all tree kind of up here. You can press a bit lighter this time. Let's go to the medium tree. Let's get some of these in. Now it's going to look terrible for quite a while. Don't worry about this. This stage always looks bad. And it'll come together at the end. So expect it to look terrible right now. Okay, that'll do. Whoops, that's a bit messy. I generally paint messy, but you kind of have to draw a line somewhere. Okay, let's do the trees in front. So the top layer, whichever one you got there, and we create a new one. Now, what color it's important what color we have. This has to be darker than this one, so it comes forward. Again, we're probably going to change these, so don't worry too much about the colors. And there's one big tree down here, and that's really about it. There's a bunch of little ones now, so a swap brush. Let's get one of these in. And I myself can't even tell if these are light or dark enough, and so I'll change them later. It's just all kind of relative now. And looking at it, I don't like this green color, so this is why I said don't worry about like following exactly what I do with the colors, because I'll change them. And it takes a while to see the colors are working. Okay, so that's the trees in front. And this green isn't working, so I'm going to change it. It's too green. It needs to be more blue or something. Okay, so let's create another one and create the rocks. Now the rocks are in shadow. Obviously rocks are pretty much gray most of the time, but that's kind of boring. So you want to pick a blue, kind of just like in the middle somewhere, and then go like here. So the more you go over here, the more desaturated and lighter it gets. So desaturated means it just goes grey. Or you can lose this side. So the more you go there, the grayer it gets. So let's find the blue we like. But it's a grey blue though, which is quite important. So don't draw rocks individually early on. Make big shapes. So that's like 10 rocks there. But we'll separate those later. And we'll do some little ones later. But right now we just want the big ones. Put some dots. I'll have a couple around here. I'll have a bunch down here. And let's put some on the path. We'll refine these later, so don't worry if they look a bit weird now. There's a bunch more, so you can use the smaller brush here to get some of these, but try not to, don't do this. They're all separate. The rocks always kind of bunched together in ones or twos. You do get the odd one, so you can put one, but I don't like that actually. You got to be careful about negative shape. So you see this green part is a negative shape, so you want a nice shape, but don't worry about it yet because we can do that later. Like if you try and do it now, you won't really see if it's working or not anyway. So, and there'll be lots more details to come. Okay, like I said, I don't like this green, so we're going to use a tool that I use quite often in Procreate. So find the layer. Sometimes you can't tell which layer it is, so if you use this visible or not visible thing, you can check you're on the right one before you start doing things. So like this one, I can't really tell what there is. Okay, it's the rocks, but well, you could rename them. I generally don't bother because I merge and create new layers all the time, but you can change that to rocks or something. I generally don't bother, like I said, but you can. Right, so choose the grass, go to here, pick this one, and adjustments, the button, and go hue, saturation, brightness. And now we can do whatever we want with it. So like I said, I want to desaturate it because I think it was too green. And maybe a little bit darker. Something like that. Okay, so that color code, because green's quite tricky, so that color code is 24361C. But again, you can see with the sliders actually what it is anyway. So it's like there, middleish and quite dark. You can just about see that, but the dots are there. Okay, so that is, I mean, if you're going to go and rename them now, so you know which one's which, that's probably not a bad idea, but I'll merge them again later, so you'll kind of lose that anyway. So that's stage 1 done, and we'll use these and we'll paint over them in the next bit. Okay, for this stage, we're going to start adding some highlights to the various parts that we already put in. The sun's coming from the top left here and kind of beaming through the trees. So need to keep that in mind when we put these highlights in. I started with the grass last time, so I'll start with the grass this time. Doesn't really matter which order you do them in, really. So whatever works. Sometimes I go from back to front. Sometimes I start where the most important thing is. And I'd say probably the most important part in this painting is the green highlights of the grass. So for this, one thing I do, let's pick any color right now. We'll change this color in a bit. So you could do this. That's a horrible green. You'd never use that. To start creating the highlights. Now, that works okay, but you can go out to the edges, and we don't want that. So one thing we can do is create a new layer. Make sure it's above the grass. It has to be above the grass. Click it once, and then turn on clip and mask, and you get this little arrow. Now, what that does, it means I can't go off the edges. And for this stage, I don't want to go off the edge, so that's perfect. So, whenever I need a highlight, I always start by picking the local color. We call it local color. And just hold down and grab the color that we need. So that gives me a rough idea what highlight I want. Now, sometimes it can be miles away, but it's just a good start. Like, it's much better than being there, because it gives me no idea whatsoever. So let's color pick back. Now, when you highlight grass, it's always good to go yellow. Not every time, but quite a lot. So you can shift that. So I use this to pick the hue. So let's do it again. So grab that, move it to the left. And you can either keep using the sliders, but now I have what yellow I want. I'll just push it up there. So pushing it up there gets lighter and brighter and more saturated. Don't go too far because that's just not realistic. So that's pretty good, actually. Again, these might change, but if you wanted to color code that, there we go, 6B, 6D to 1, you could stick that straight in. Or I would prefer if you just make up your own colors. And if it's not exact, it doesn't really matter. If I move this significantly, it still really doesn't matter. You would just get a different highlight color, which is completely fine. And plus you can change it later with that adjustments thing I told you anyway. And you can change it later. So really don't worry about colors. It's more what we're doing with the highlights and stuff. So there's quite a lot of highlights here, but it's important to leave some. So with the big brush, we can, so this is mostly in highlights here, but make sure you keep some of these greens. But if you accidentally overdo it, like I do sometimes, or quite a lot of the times actually, we can come back and tidy them up in a second. So let's do this. It kind of gets a bit darker up there. And so I'm pressing lightly up here. And there we go. So for the highlights, you want to press hard and soft, and because we want variation this time. Okay, that'll do. So if you've accidentally overdone it, pick the eraser. Well, even if you haven't, pick the eraser. So I don't want to highlight there because there's a rocks and it's gonna cast a shadow, and maybe I do want more there. But so I'm not careful here. I just, because I'm going to do this. So pick your eraser. If you hold it down, it'll change the eraser to be whatever your paintbrush is, or it's supposed to. Let's try that again. It's not working. Okay, I don't know why. Okay, so pick the flat brush. It's always good to have the same eraser as the brush you're using, because then it's the same shape. I don't have size settings for these the eraser brush because you can change it quite a lot. So now I've got this eraser in, I can get back some of this stuff that I didn't want to highlight and mess it up a little bit, so we can add some details and make the highlights a bit more interesting. And you could put little dots and things, and you can put, like, to insinuate the grass is coming through, but we'll do this more now, later, sorry. But this is just a first pass. We generally do, so I build it up slowly, and you'll start to see what's working, what's not working. But you want to bring all the layers up at the same time. You don't want to spend hours on this grass and then go to the rocks because it's hard to make them look consistent. So that's fine for the grass. Let's move on to the rocks. Why I'm doing the rocks and not the trees, because I did the trees last time, but I think now, because we've got the highlights on the grass, the rocks are looking a bit funny. So let's try the rocks. So we do the same again. We create a new layer, clip and mask on. You get the little arrow thing, and usually I just give it a quick test. I just take a bright one and just have a look, make sure it's working. So we want a highlight. So it's a little bit different this time, because even if I pick the dark shadow of the rock, because this dark side of rocks are really dark, rocks are more contrasty, so you have to go way different to what color it is, and you don't want to pick the same color. So grass doesn't reflect as much as rocks do. So I usually still pick the shadow color anyway, just to give me an idea. And we want to, so it's kind of up to you what you want the sun to be, what color sun you want, because that's different all the time. But let's keep it easy and go for a yellow. Now, make sure it's not too saturated or too bright, so we can brighten it up later. It's quite hard to make it darker again, but it's easier to go brighter. So be reasonably conservative for your highlight, so you can see where it is. Like, the color doesn't matter so much. So this is the color. Pretty much anything would work as long as you're consistent. As long as now you use a purple highlight everywhere, like on the trees and stuff, it'll be fine. So this scale slider doesn't really make a huge difference. But for me, I want it over there. So the sky color is generally around here anyway, most of the time. Unless you go on stylized, and then it'll be something else. So it's around here, because it's the sun is orangey yellowish. Okay, so we can do roughly the same again. So keeping in mind the sun's coming from this way, and you don't want to over highlight rocks, so leave big areas of shadow. So these might not actually be dark enough, so I might have to come back to that. So just get in some big highlights for now, and we're gonna do pretty much what we did last time and remove some of these highlights later. Okay, so that gives you, let me undo. So if you don't like using a big brush, I understand using big brushes, it can be quite tricky. So if you don't like using the big brush, then just use a medium one, and do, yeah, fine, like this. So to add detail to these now, what we can do is the eraser again. So grab the eraser, and you can start to put details on. Now, you probably don't want to go crazy right now again, because we want to move to the other parts and make sure everything kind of works as well. So we're going to do more of that later. But if you've really messed up some of the highlights, and like this, so I probably put in too much too soon, so that you can't highlight like the entire section of the rock, because the sun, it wouldn't hit it. So I got to bring some of these back, so it's just a bit of a tidy up, and we can worry about the details later on the next stage. Okay, so that will do for now. And now we can do the same for the path. So we need to brighten a few places up. So again, we go above the path, clip and mask on, and now we highlight. So this is the dark part of the path. So if we pick that color, we can just shift it up a bit, and maybe make it a little bit more yellowy for the highlights, but it's not probably as highlighted as the rocks, so it's all relative. Make sure it's not quite as bright, and it's probably a bit too bright. Okay, there we go, that'll do. So so wherever the highlight that's coming from the grass is also going to hit the path. So you need the kind of consistency there. So that's bright, so it's going to come through here. pretty much all of it. And then we got the big highlight here, so it's going to hit some of that. And it kind of gets a bit messy here, so you can kind of just leave that alone. And there's one thing a little bit different about paths. Because paths always kind of sink in where they hit here, you want to leave a little line here. Oops, did it. You want to leave a little bit of a line down here so you can tell that the path kind of goes inwards. So yeah, don't worry too much about that. We can tidy that up later. So that's it. It's looking a bit messy, but don't worry about it. The colors are probably wrong, and there's all sorts of weird things to fix. Okay. Let's sort the background out, and then we'll do the trees last. So the background is a little bit different. So grab your trees, not those ones, the back trees. And now we're going to do something a little bit different. We need kind of more detail on the trees. We can do it now. Yeah, let's do it now. So color pick your tree, go like that, go onto the small brush. My small brush is a little bit small, but that's fine. And let's add some detail to these trees. Now, when I say detail, all I really mean is like branches and stuff, and maybe some smaller tree. And maybe a branch. Now, make sure that it's not too similar everywhere, so you don't want that. It starts to look like a pattern. So try and vary where these lines go. You don't have to be that careful, as you can tell. But just make it kind of look like a foresty background. Okay, there we go. So you can be a little bit more careful than that. And if you go a big brush, maybe there's a bushy one up here. And maybe there's some detail in there, but you're not going to see it much after I start to do this section anyway. So let's create a new layer above it. Actually, let's change the white, because nothing is really white in landscapes. So let's change that white to something. So click the background color, and it'll just pop up the color. And you know, yellowish is fine. So just pick a yellow, but be very close to white. Okay, so we've got these trees. Hopefully, no, what is this? That's my new layer. Let's do that again. So we're on the trees. Let's create a new layer. Same again. Clipping mask. Check it. Okay, looks good. Now what we're going to do is slightly different here. So color pick the background with your big brush. Make sure it's doing this kind of thing. Now paint in sort of messy and fairly light, and kind of blend it in with the ground and the sky. And it'll look a bit weird right now, but don't worry about that. And it looks kind of messy. It might not be the right color. Go to adjustments, go to Gaussian blue, and then move it like that. And it will blur out the trees and make it look like they're in the background. Okay, so that's basically it. We can add a few more effects, but yeah, let's do that now. So you can experiment with this, but add another layer. Turn clipping mask on again. Check what it does, because you want it to be consistent. Okay, so it does the right thing. Now what you can do fairly subtly, you can put colors into this, so it's all kind of monochrome at the moment. But if you want it to look a bit more interesting, you can pick like really bright oranges or something and gently in there, and then you can do the same. So we go to adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we blur it out a little bit. Now if it's too strong, you can change the colors here with that tool I showed you earlier, and you could do something like that, which looks kind of cool. Or you can just leave it the orange, and then you can keep doing that as much as you want. So we turn clipper mask on, we go there, we pick. So this is going into the shadow section right here. So usually shadows are blue. So I can pick a kind of crazy blue there, do the same, Gaussian blue, blur it out, Now you got to be a bit careful here because when you blur, it kind of moves things. So you might want to paint that bit back in and blend it in darker. So it's a bit too blue at the moment, right? So this is where we go hue, saturation, brightness. We drop it down, saturation. And if it's still too powerful, there's another thing we can do. We press the N, and then we can lower how much it does affect the background. So that's what it looks like with the two effects in the background. So if I turn them off, you get that, which still looks fine, but there just adds a bit more to it. You don't, I mean, I don't like leaving all these layers there forever, so I'm fairly happy with that. So I'll merge these effect layers together, and then I can turn them off, turn them on. Don't merge it to the bottom one though, because the bottom one you can still affect a little bit, and you can leave the effect on top of whatever. So, I mean, that looks pretty cool anyway, and all I did was I changed the color to kind of a green, I think. So if I undo that, it's orangey. If I put it back, it's kind of greeny, but it's probably getting a little bit overboard because you're going to have to up everything first. So that's the effects layer. Hopefully that makes sense. Gaussian blur, clipper mask. Rewatch that if it's a bit confusing, but it's the same concept every time. Okay, so we have only one highlight area to go. Actually, there's a bunch of trees we want in the mid foreground here behind these trees to join these layers together. We can maybe do that. Well, let's finish this highlight and then we can add these trees later. Okay, so let's pick the trees again. New layer. Click it. Clipper mask. Double check we're on the right one. Looks good. So we want some highlights to these trees. So I'll start off with this. Highlights on bark tree is very subtle. So unless the sun is blasting on it, and in our case it generally isn't. So these highlights are going to be, so the sun's coming from here, so it hits a couple of these a little bit, but it doesn't do a great deal. So be a bit sparing on these, and these ones are just totally black. Okay, if we go back to this tree layer and pick these, let's add a few branches and stuff on there too. Check how big that is. That's probably too big, so let's put some details on these. Let's go up here. We'll blend these in to the floor later because they look kind of stuck on. And there's some foliage up here, which is sort of optional. And this is more foliage up here. No, wrong layer here. No, okay, blah, blah, blah. Right, and that'll do for now. Starting to look a bit more like trees. And there's a few highlights there, but that's not really a highlight. We'll get into that in the next stage. Okay, that's all the highlights done, and the background kind of done, and we can move on to stage 3, which is putting detail into the shadows. Okay, now we've done all the highlights. We want to add detail into these blocky shadow sections. This shouldn't take long because it's basically the same as the highlights, but not quite as bright. We need to do that because we don't really have any flat sections in real life, so we need to do that. So let's start with the grass doesn't really have any. So there's little bits, but we'll get to that. So there's a couple of little bits. What we're looking for is the major shape. So let's start with the rocks. Okay, so we can reuse the highlight area that we've already got, but we just need to highlight it. So basically what the highlights are in the shadow is we need to do something like that, but with a different color. So we take that, and this time we do want to stay roughly the same and make sure it's not too bright. So this one's a little tricky to get the right color. Well, that one looks okay. So do it again, grab that and like shift it up a little bit, and just be careful not to go too far. So what we're looking for is interesting shapes here, where the rocks will be broken up and that kind of stuff. We just add in just detail. There we go, that's it. But it makes a big difference. So, well, I can't. You could put these on another layer if you really wanted to, but I just undo it so you can see the difference. Like, it looks really boring. So let me redo them back in, and now it looks like it's formed properly, and we can make these even more interesting later. But for now, let's just get them in and cover most of the area, but not all of it. Leave some gaps. We're gonna go back into the highlights and the shadows anyway later, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Okay, there we go. That's all we needed to do. Nice and quick, but quite important. And the only other real big shape we need to do this for is this tree here. So find the tree highlights. We only have a few, so they're quite hard to find, but grab that one again. The color of the tree, shift it up a bit, and that's all you need to do. And add some detail to this tree. And if it goes too light, which I think it might have, I'll show you a little trick to darken that. We can't really use all the adjustments easily now because I put it all on one layer. So if you do want to do it, the dark parts, the dark highlights, I don't really know what we call them, on another layer, just create the same again, just create another layer and then clip and mask. But I find if you have too many layers, it gets a bit confusing, so I try not to have too many. So if you go a bit too bright, like I have here, so whoops, this is darker up here, grab the actual color underneath and then lightly go over the top again, and they'll darken them. So that's really all there is to it. Right, so that's about it for that section. So now we're going to have to put in some of those trees I missed earlier. You could have done this at the start, or it doesn't really matter. But if you notice this hard line here, sorry, this one, is a bit weird because if it wouldn't really do that. It's like, how would it go off a cliff? I mean, it's kind of weird. So we can sort that out fairly straightforward. So underneath the grass layer, create a new layer, and let's pick the grass shadow color and darken it a little bit. So something like that. And I'm going to put some simple pine trees back here, but pine trees are really dark, so it's going to be something like this. But I'll be a bit more careful in a second, and it's going to break up that line. These trees are not huge, so let's try the medium brush. Yeah, that'll do. So obviously they're thick down the bottom, thin up the top. Bit like the rocks, the pine trees come in bunches as well, so make sure it's not like one layer, one layer, one layer, one layer. This, so you don't have to copy exactly what I'm doing, and I'd say definitely don't copy exactly what I'm doing, but make sure they kind of come together like that, and you know, change the way I'm doing it if you don't like it. More of them, less of them, it's totally up to you. I think that'll do. And now, so it breaks up that line. You could put a few down here if you wanted to, but I quite like this section, so I'm leaving it. And if you go here and toggle it off, I'll show you the difference it makes. You know, so not the end of the world if we don't put it in, but that looks quite good. So now I missed this. I need to do the other stages quickly. So I'll create a new layer. I need to do the highlight of it. So I turn clip and mask on again. Zoom in so I can see what I'm doing. Pick the local color, which is this dark greeny. Shift it and move it up a bit and have a look. That's pretty good. So the sun again. Oops. Don't seem to have clip and mask on. Should have checked it. I got some mess on there as well, so I can clear it. So I don't have clipper mask on, you know, because you don't have that little arrow down there. And I should have tested it, but not the end of the world. And let's get some highlights of the trees. Make sure the highlight doesn't spill over to the right too much. And up here is all kind of in shadow up this section, so don't put too many highlights up there. But get all these edges. Now, if you want to do it quickly, you can grab the razor brush and make the trees have more detail, literally just by plopping a few of those highlights out. Maybe we could do some lighter ones, but we'll light it up as we go. So the major stages are done, so now we start tweaking based on what we want the viewer to look at. So which is around here. And so we can start tweaking it. Okay, so let's tone this down and make this more interesting. So let's go to the highlights on the grass, which is all these yellows, and let's get rid of quite a lot of this up here so it's not highlighting so much. Again, I just got the eraser on and it's the flat brush. It's the same brush. And so we can leave some highlights. So it looks like there's quite a lot of detail there. But now it pushes the focus down here because we don't look at shadow areas too much. And if you overdone it, just grab the highlight and put it back. Put it back in if you like it. But I mean, that's kind of up to you how much you want to put here or whatever. Okay, there we go. So that pushes it down a little bit. Now I'll boost this a little bit, not too much though. Now you can start to use your brush a little bit more varied. So if I zoom in here, it's looking like this because when I use my brush, I'm varying pressure. Now you want to do that at this start of the stage because we're trying to make the painting more interesting. And we get that by varying brush pressure for one thing. And all this area is actually highlighted quite a lot because this is where the sun's coming through. Okay, that's not bad. And if we don't like the colors, we can tweak those later. And I think I'll darken some of these rocks to make it. I mean, one thing you can do is just take the actual rock color, which is here somewhere. This one, yeah. And you can go to hue, saturation, brightness, and you can play around with it if you didn't get it dark enough. That's too dark. That's maybe okay. But when I start playing around with these things, I can actually tell sometimes it didn't need changing. So just leave it. Okay, these rocks could do with a bit more detail. So maybe this needs tidying up, but we'll do that at the end. I kind of do a tidy up section everywhere at the end. But these rocks could do with more detail. Now, it's really easy to add detail. So remember, we put these highlights in stage 2, I think it was. We need to remove them now. But what you want to do is the more details you want, the smaller brush you want. Now, that's kind of up to you. I don't go crazy on detail, mainly because I don't like taking forever to do it. But if you want lots of detail, you can do that. Just make sure the detail is around this area and don't put it up here. And don't put it in these trees back there. So area of detail is here, so that's fine. So using your small brush, which might be relative to you, I mean how small your brush is, but all you gotta do is really start taking these lines out of these rocks, and it kind of makes other rocks and things like that. I'm probably not gonna do it all. overly fine because you don't want to watch me doing these little scribbles for hours. So I'm going to do it fairly straightforward and not add too much, but you could add a lot more. I'll zoom out in a second and you can see how quick it is to make all these details with basically doing hardly anything, to be honest. Okay, there we go. So that's starting to look pretty cool. Make sure you don't go overboard. You can definitely overdo this. I have done myself many times, and it'll start to look a bit funny if you go too far. So make sure you leave big flat spaces sometimes. So you can take out big chunks as well. Yeah, so make sure you leave like this big chunk, maybe here, something like that. Make sure you leave it. Now this bit's kind of messy, which is fine. But you can't really see what's going on. If it's getting a bit too messy, then simplify it. Now, what that means is just have more shadow and more obvious highlights. So just get rid of a lot of it, and it'll start to hopefully be a bit easier to read as you look at it. Okay, so it's again a little bit less messy. Still a bit messy, but that's quite good sometimes. So don't try and make everything neat. That doesn't really work. So that's a funny shape rocked, but I'm gonna leave that. Okay, so that looks pretty cool. We're getting there now. We're getting to the detail stage, basically, where it's up to you what you do, and there is no right or wrong answer here. The path is a bit boring. I mean, it would have some pebbles and things. Let's get some foliage in here, because I think one thing we really want in all our painters, well, I mean, not every single painting, is contrast. So on this layer where we have the trees, grab this color again. It's slightly green. I wouldn't worry too much about that because it's so dark you can't really see it. But actually, I'll create another layer here because I want to erase, and I don't want to erase these. There's nothing wrong with those. So create a new layer above. Be very careful here. You might have noticed that when you create a layer, and there's a clipping mask already there, it'll clip and mask the other one. You don't want that, so put it above the highlights and make sure clip and mask is off, or it's going to cause you problems. We want to be able to put this everywhere. So I usually grab a big brush again, and that's too green, so I can adjust it. It's too green, so there we go. I don't want too much color. This is very much in shadow, so you don't want too much color here. So let's put some, oops, I need to color pick the one I changed, and let's put some foliage here. Now I'm gonna erase as we mess around with it, and I think I'm gonna put some, as you go further back and things get less dark, so make sure you shift it a little bit to the green, because as the highlight hits here, the sun is very strong, so it'll get dark, but back there it won't be so contrasty. Okay, it's fine. Let's not go overboard. So now to tidy this up, I picked my eraser. Now I don't have markings here, but it's very small, and then we can start shaping these leaves and taking off the edges. So what we're trying to do here is basically remove some edges so they're not so harsh, and you can put little holes here and there where the branches and things kind of have holes, and all sorts of stuff happens with these, and I don't follow any reference when I do this. I just make it up. It would take ages to follow, and I don't even think it's possible to follow what I'm doing here, but basically what I'm trying to do is make the edges more interesting. And you can flip back to the brush in small if you want. So you can flip back and forth and shape them up as you like. Just make sure there's kind of no big blobby bits. with big sharp edges, like big flat edges, because that just wouldn't really happen. So we can, don't worry so much about the background, and don't put too much detail in because it's far away. So some of the edges, as long as they're not crazy sharp everywhere, then it's fine. So I wouldn't do too much detail around here. Maybe some gaps. So now basically all that's really left to do is add a bit of finesse, a bit of tidy up, and see what you like and don't like. And that's really it. So the detail phase now, so you can add overlapping element. So now I'll paint all over the place, but I don't really want to be messing around working out which layer I'm on all the time. So I'll generally just create a layer above everything, and I'll pick my main brush. I'll probably put it on small. It's a little bit small, but I might flip between the brushes as I go. And so now I'm just looking for things that I want to do. There isn't really any right or wrong answer here. So what I do is I try and integrate parts of the painting. So basically what that means is I'm trying to overlap, so things don't look so stuck on. Now I can't really tell you do X, Y, Z everywhere. It's just because that would be very hard to follow. But if you take that off, like this area, so watch this area, you can see now that things start to look more integrated. Now we do this basically everywhere, and as much or little as you want. So usually I'm color picking. We're going to put some flowers down here as well, but we can do that at the end. But I'm usually color picking exactly the color underneath, and you can go even smaller with your brushes here. You don't have to stick to those three, and like I said, just integrate and just basically just have some fun or where you want to paint anything. So like I said, there's no right or wrong answer here. Just mess around and see what works. So one thing you want to do, so there's another thing I do quite a lot, is make sure that the painting is not too clean anywhere, because those shapes that we put in were quite neat, you know, as we're blocking in everything. We're going to make sure that things don't line up. Now I see a couple of problems where that's happening, and I'll show you in a second. So we have, I mean, this is a bit messy. We can sort that out in a second. But it's this kind of stuff that you got to watch out for. These lines are too neat. Now that doesn't really happen. So we take either way. You can go in or out. And let's just get some of this. It's better to have actually the shadow color of things first, because basically what I'm doing is the early technique where I was doing the blocking and the highlight. I'm kind of just doing that in one quick go. So you can take the shadow color and then grab the highlight and put it on top. And you could go further out and you could put like a big blocker where the grass has gone onto the road or the path. You know, something like that. But again, make sure you integrate. Okay, let's tidy this up a little bit. Again, we can integrate a little bit so it doesn't look like it's stuck on so much. Now, integrating basically means it just kind of just blends in with the floor a little bit more, so it looks like it's part of the floor, where it doesn't just end abruptly and then join whatever it's sitting on, for example. So I'll take the colors and kind of blend them in like this. So I want it a bit sharper. We can do that. And, you know, look for kind of weird bits. And then we can add some more back. Now you could do all these on the layers that we did earlier. But the problem is it would take ages working out which layers you're on and if you're on the right clipper mask and all that kind of stuff. So you can spend a long time on this, hours probably. Stick some music on, and you know, this is kind of the fun bit. Well, I mean, I guess it's all fun, but it's I think we like detail a lot. So this is kind of the fun section. Right, so let's tidy it up now. So what I can show you is if I didn't do this, it would end up like that. You know, so it looks kind of messy. So this kind of rounds everything off. So we turn that back on, and everything's starting to look like it's integrated now, whereas before it looked a bit, things are like stuck on. So that's what we want to avoid. So if we concentrate on this area here, you can see if I turn it off, how it's integrated. And what I'm doing is taking the colors from there, putting it into there, taking it from there, putting it into there. And, you know, I'm pressing lightly on my pen, I should add. And so that means, so I'm not taking this and fully whacking it down. I'll take this and I'll gently, so you can see it's only happening gently, not hard. And so this is, to be honest, this is where it gets a bit tricky, I suppose, because I can't tell you exactly what to do. You have to kind of feel your way around it and find. So, I mean, this is what I'm trying to look for, though. Like funny shapes like this. I don't want that. So you don't have to do much. Like, so I don't say like completely change it. You're just trying to get away from like weird shapes, you know, like this is another one, and you can add a little bit detail here or there. And what you're trying to do is merge things and consistencies. So here I had like a really dark, make sure I'm on the right layer. I had a dark shadow here, but then there wasn't one there, right? So consistency. So, you know, like what is that? Now I've defined it, and you can kind of see that it's just a rock, right? But it needs to be consistent. So I can tidy some of this up. Put a few highlights here and there to say, okay, there's a little one. You know, you can put a little rock there. This is kind of messy. Look, we can blend that in. You could put like a few little blobs up here to pretend there's some rocks. Now, this is what I said earlier about this path being a bit clean. So we want some little stones here and there, and make sure. I kind of messed up there because you really should start with the shadow side. So even these little pebbles have shadows. Sometimes they don't if they're really stuck into the ground, but assume they do. But some don't. So like again, don't go too crazy. Blend that one in so it doesn't look so stuck on. Again, this one, gently put the ground into it so it looks like it merges. So I'm just gently putting the ground. You can put the ground into the floor, the shadows into the floor too. And this nice blue, you can put it into the floor itself, like here. So consistency again I'm looking for, and this rock is missing some sort of shadow. Like it can't be completely in highlight because that doesn't make any sense. So round that off and blend it back in, and tighten some of this. Rocks are quite sharp edges, And so, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to define things, but you don't want to do that in the early stages because you can't tell how to merge things in. So without all these colors already there, I couldn't merge them in correctly. So that's why I leave it to the end. Now, this is where I said to not overdo the dark detail, and I think I have here. So I'm kind of going to undo that a bit. Now, how you know it's overdone is it's just got like too many lines and things. So too many lines doesn't look good. And now and again, put some little highlights in the shadows where the sun would poke through. That always looks pretty cool when you do that. Okay, this is, there's messy parts right here, and if you're going to use this for, something like professional, or you want to post it or somewhere like that, you could spend a lot more time tidying this up. But the process is going to be the same no matter what. So one thing I'd like to do at the end is make sure everything's working. So by that I mean, is it highlighted enough? So I'm looking for the shadows versus the highlights. And sorry, this tree should integrate a bit more, to be honest. And it just stops there, which isn't good. So it's easy to miss that kind of stuff. And, does it blend in well, etc. It's quite easy to miss it. So generally what I'll do is kind of just scan it everywhere and look for like weirdness. I did say we're going to put some flowers down here. I'll do a quick one, and then so I like to do flowers on a different layer, just right up the top, because you can change the colors easily then. So one thing you need to do with flowers is, see this grass, color pick that grass and make it a lot darker, and not too far off black. The reason is we need to make something colorful and contrasty. You need a dark underneath, and usually flowers will kind of cast a shadow underneath, so you can't actually see underneath anyway. So make that really dark. You could put some down here too, by the way, but let's just do this one for now. So that's dark. I'm going to do another layer again because if I want to make it more colorful, I don't want to make the background more colorful. But we'll merge them probably when I'm done. So flower color is completely up to you. So pick whatever you want, but just this is kind of a shadowy area, so make sure it's not too bright if you're going to put them down here. So let's just do a simple messy flower. Again, much like rocks and trees, they come in bunches. So if you're going to do one, then do a bunch of them. So that's the color, and then we'll have like an orangey, whatever these are. I don't even know what these are called. Let me know if you know what these are called, but this is the orangey bit. So we got that's the shadow. Again, it's the same kind of concept, but I'm just doing it with the brush straight away now. You can put a little bit in there. And you want to vary these colors a little bit. So let's get some blue in there. And when it overlaps, we want to make sure it overlaps. And we can do the same again with these. We take that and eraser and whoops, and make a few lines here and there, so it looks like it's a bit more interesting. So the eraser can do a lot more than fix things. I use it quite a lot for shaping and things like that. Okay, there we go. Nice couple of. You don't want them too crazy because this isn't the focus. The focus is down here. I would probably put some a little bit of flowers over here just to balance it out. But I probably wouldn't go too nuts. And probably wouldn't paint them exactly. Just a few little spots of them, rather than so just insinuate they're there rather than painting them. Make sure they integrate again. Okay, there we go. I think it's looking pretty cool. There's a lot more you could do. You could put more flowers. You could put more rocks. Just as long as it's consistent, you're okay. So as long as you don't have loads of detail there, none there, etc. So okay, I think I'll wrap it up there though. I wouldn't say this is finished. I mean, because you would probably spend more time tidying up. But I've got the message across of how I go from there to here. And really what I'm trying to say, as in I'm not finished here, is that detail layer, where I was finishing and tidying everything off. If you have a look at that and I turn that back on, you can see, it's starting to tidy up and look a lot more finished. Now, I'd probably just do that. So if you noticed, I've kind of just done this area. I'd go around and do that everywhere. So just for one more example before I finish up, I would, for example, take this stuff and start making it bark and add in texture. Again, same brush. But it's fairly quick. I mean, you don't want to be messing about too much. So even though you could spend hours, I don't say you probably should. And then again, maybe these need some nicer tree bits, and maybe this could do a bit more foliage. But I'm pretty sure you could do that yourself. Now you don't need to watch me do that. So hopefully this has been useful for you. If it has, give me a like and a comment so I know it's useful and I can do more of them. And let me know if I didn't explain anything well enough, and I can try to explain it better in the next one. So subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.